Well, now I want to start the new one of the new segments on our shows. This one is about N-scale modeling. It's sponsored by National Capital Trains, which is owned by Bernard Chrysler, and I really appreciate Bernard wanting to be a part of the show, and I really appreciate him being the sponsor for the N-scale portion of it.
Quick introduction of myself. My name's Clem Harris. My daytime job is the railroad. I've done a little bit of everything in the last 27 years, but I've always migrated back to the engineer's seat. For those that may know me from elsewhere, I'm the N-scale shenanigans guy. I've gotten really rambunctious with lighting and sound if you follow my page. This is the first go around for me doing anything like this. I'm looking forward to the evolution of this segment as we move forward. I have a bit of a weird schedule, which necessitates pre-recording my segments, but I hope you enjoy them. I'm going to jump right into today's segment. Here's an introduction to the area today's guest is modeled. Afton Canyon is referred to as the Grand Canyon of the Mojave Desert. It's about 35 miles east of Barstow in San Bernardino County. The Mojave River runs through the canyon. This is a prominent feature on my guest layout as a dry wash. The area is dotted with many abandoned mines. The area is enjoyed by rockhounds, fossil hunters, campers, and is also enjoyed by the four-wheeling community, amongst many other activities. The canyon itself is approximately 7 miles long. It's it's designated as a watchable wildlife area and is home to many bighorn sheep. The canyon shows spectacular scenery that displays wind and water erosion that has various shades of tans, greens, and reds. These colors all vary with the time of year, sunlight, and the amount of recent precipitation. It's unlike any other place you have seen. Afton Canyon is located between Yermo, California, and Las Vegas, Nevada on the SEMA subdivision. It would operate under three different names in its history, the original name being the San Pedro, Los Angeles, and Salt Lake Railroad from its completion in 1905 to 1916, Los Angeles and Salt Lake Railroad from 1916 to 1988, and then overlapping with that second name, the Union Pacific Railroad from the 1920s to the present. It's commonly referred to as the Salt Lake Route. If you haven't guessed yet, my guest today is Craig Martin. Many will remember him from BLMA, which was the acronym Best Looking Models Around. When I first met Craig, he was at BLMA's headquarters in Fullerton, California. It had an incredible view of BNSF's Southern Transcon, Metrolink, and various Amtrak services in Southern California. And Craig, if you want to cut your camera on, we can get as I've got a few odds and ends basic questions for you, Craig, and just to kind of get a pulse of who you are, what you've done in the hobby, what you're doing. What got you into trains, man?
So yeah, well, first of all, and again, dude, good to see you. Thanks for having me. And I am happy to be here as the modeling side of it, not the business side anymore. We can go into that later, but I think, like a lot of us growing up, I had a grandfather who had a model train HO scale layout in his house, and but he didn't run it. He was more of he was an art teacher, and so let me just maybe slow this down. He was an art teacher, and it was more about building the scenery and doing all that, and the trains were kind of the afterthought. But in addition to that, before I went to preschool, my babysitter, her house buttered up to an SP line, so this is like late 80s. I would see tunnel motors all day long. And back then, didn't know what they were. But looking back, it's like, oh, man, I wish I could see those concepts again, because killer EMD, big, heavy trains moving at real slow speeds through where they were locally here. But so just kind of always around them. And then my dad would take me, ironically, to the Fullerton train station to watch trains. And, again, like you mentioned, when we first met and when I had the BLMA business going on, I have a condo right there by the train station that looks over that station. So a lot of history for me in Fullerton, still here to this day. But yeah, that's kind of it growing up, just always around them in one way or the other.
That's awesome. I grew up in Colorado Springs on the Joint Line, And I remember vividly Southern Pacific Tunnel Motors, Rio Grande Tunnel Motors, Cotton Belt Tunnel Motors just hammering through town. And at night, the just being able to hear almost, it seemed like every cylinder just pounding through
Yeah.
my grandfather's house as they were running coal trains up and down the joint line. And even the light packages that were on all that stuff back in the 80s, when SP had all the gyro lights and everything. I mean, I can vividly remember that. That's actually neat that we share somewhat of a similar memory on that.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
And you kind of got into my next question a little bit here, but I wanted to ask you what's some of your earliest memories of trains?
Boy, earliest memories I think would be it kind of answers that same thing. My just standing on my babysitter's headboard in her bedroom and looking out and seeing these tunnel motors go by slowly. Or we go to Cajon Pass also as a kid. I think it was just that I have 3 kids now, and we've talked about this, but they're certainly rambunctious, and so everyone's like, "Oh, that's payback for how you were as a kid." But I think back about going to Cajon Pass, and I'm like, "Well, my dad's not into trains." But we'd go pick up some donuts, grab his buddy, and we go up there and watch trains because they knew I was into trains. And in hindsight, because I have kids now and they're rambunctious, I can tell you that he just did it to get me out of the house so that I had something to look at, right? Like it was a little self-serving for everybody. I got something out of it, and he got to keep me occupied for a little bit so I didn't tear the house up. But yeah, that's I have some really fond memories of that. And who would have known? I think for all of us, right? It starts with one little tiny thing, and then like both of us, I mean, you have a career in it, and decades later, we still love it.
Well, and that's actually the fun thing. Like I remember back some of the original trains that I had as a kid. The venerable Tyco Santa Fe F unit. I was the kid back then. I was trying to set it up and figure out how I could do jumps with it because when I was a kid, the Dukes of Hazzard was the show on TV. Yeah. And so I was trying to do jumps with a Santa Fe F7, and flanges and rails. Little 4 or 5-year-old Clem didn't quite grasp the concept of flanges and rails the same way 48-year-old Clem does. So
yeah, well, that's for sure. That's
right, flanges and rails, they're a godsend. But
yep.
I was going to ask you too, Craig, why did you pick N scale? Out of all the scales you could have picked, there's O, there's HO, there's S, and each one offers a lot of different things to the hobby. Why N scale?
Yeah, well, for me personally, I had a family friend member get me a Bachmann, or we call it Botchman, train set.
Yeah.
It was an Amtrak. I think, what was the big engine? Like what was the big electric engine they had?
Oh, there was like a kind of a quasi E60, I think.
Yeah. And it had like the dual end, kind of stuff. He got me that set. And kind of from there is where I just, because I was N scale at that point because of that set, then other people would buy me N scale stuff and this, that, whatever. And then it just kind of evolved from there. But, certainly I appreciate the other scales, but I think that, I'm big into super detailing of the models and of the engines, but then I also like to watch them go through a bigger scene. And for me, this still to this day, I think for what my purpose is, which is kind of like a rail fan, I'm not a big switcher. I like to run long trains with DP units. I like to model exactly as the canyon is. And it's so big in real life that to kind of shrink it down and feel like I'm there, it had to be this. It had to be N scale.
Greg, can you describe the size of your layout for everybody watching us today?
Yeah, this layout is essentially from what you can see here, and I hope the mic's picking me up as I move around a little bit, but
it is.
Okay, it's a small room, but effectively this is 2 basically 4x8 sheets of plywood eld together, and then with a helix that kind of spirals down, but it's kind of a funky twisted track plan underneath to maximize train length. So I'm in a room. This room I think is maybe 12 by 12 or something of that nature. It's a rectangle, but it's maybe 12 by 15. It's one of the bigger rooms outside of our master bedroom, but this layout barely fits. And then I had started building benchwork around the outside to make it bigger, but eventually I'm going to build a building in the backyard to take this portion that's finished of the layout, put it back there, and then build the rest of it kind of on steroids. So that would be a 20 by 20 foot layout. But as it is right now, it's basically 2 4x8s, in an L configuration together.
That's awesome. And again, having seen your layout in person when I got to visit you earlier in the year, the amount of scenery you've been able to put into that layout, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're modeling more or less a single scene on your layout. Am I seeing that correctly?
Well, yeah, to your point about the facts of Afton Canyon, I think it's 6-7 miles long in real life. So if you're looking, so you can see my Yermo badge here. So going that way, you're going east. Going the other way, you're going towards Barstow. So as you go through the scene from left to right or right to left or east to west as it may be, I've tried to model accurately the different topography and as things change, because if you look behind me here, this area on the prototype looks like this, but it's further east, and this area, I'm sorry, further west on that side. And then over here, it kind of starts to level out. You've got your double bridge span here. Way back here, we've got this culvert. So these are all 3D printed to match the prototype. So I went out, got dimensions, had somebody draw them up and had them made through Shapeways. And so again, around the layout, as you kind of walk around from east to west or west to east, you follow how things change in the canyon. So it's one location, but it's the 7-mile stretch condensed into this layout.
That is absolutely awesome. And again, like I said, when I got to see your layout in person, it's still phenomenal. Like I'm sitting here looking over your shoulder right now, and you've captured some of the green in the sagebrush and the desert grasses down in the river wash and on the hillside. But then you've captured even the reddish hues that are so common in the desert, and then the white cliffs in the background with the wind and water erosion over time. I mean, that's absolutely insane. You're hard pressed to find this level of detail in any scale, let alone in scale.
I really appreciate it. Yeah. And it's kind of I'm 6'4", and this thing already sits kind of high. So some of these mountains go up, pretty tall, but I definitely wanted to get that kind of wow factor, because in the canyon, that's how I feel when I go in there. It's like, wow, this place is beautiful and it's big.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to ask, I know a lot of this segment is designed to be geared more towards N-scalers, but do you dabble in any other scales at all, or live steam?
As my daughter would say, no.
Good. I'm happy to hear that.
Are you kidding me, man? Do you know like how many hours in the day we'd be like wasting if we, like it would be tough. I know a lot of people do it, but
right. And that's the same with me. I mean, I between doing 1-to-1 for a living and all of the stuff that goes with that, and then trying to do more than N scale, I'd be lost. Occasionally, at least on my end, I'll tackle a project for a friend, like doing a sound install for HO stuff.
Or this car you did that you graciously left.
Oh, yay. Thank you. Yeah.
Amazing. I mean, there's plenty of stuff to keep busy in one scale, but for sure, I know plenty of guys. I would like to eventually do a live steam layout. That would be my next thing. And I would want to do it in a grand scale. Frankly, we don't have the space here at this house to do it, but yeah, if I did it, it would be bigger, but that's down the road.
Okay, that's fair. For me, I outside of 1-to-1 and N, I don't know that I want to tackle anything else. I'm good.
I feel you. I hear you.